Every trader enters the market searching for an edge, some hidden truth, some secret pathway that transforms uncertainty into consistent results. But the real secrets you should know are not buried in indicators, complex patterns, or the next breakthrough strategy. They live in a place far more influential, the internal landscape that determines how you perceive risk, respond to opportunity, and define your relationship with the market. These secrets are not mystical, they are psychological principles that most traders overlook because they're too busy trying to control the market instead of understanding themselves. The first secret is that the market doesn't owe you anything. Not a win, not a perfect setup, not even a logical reaction. Many traders suffer because they approach the markets with expectations shaped by logic and fairness. But the market isn't a structured environment. It is an ever-changing reflection of millions of independent decisions. Understanding this removes the emotional burden of expecting outcomes and frees you to focus on what you can control, your behavior. Another secret is that your beliefs about uncertainty shape every action you take. Most traders crave certainty. They want to know that the next trade will win, that their analysis is right, that the outcome is guaranteed, but certainty is incompatible with trading. The trader who accepts uncertainty, not intellectually but emotionally, can act without hesitation, fear, or internal conflict. When you stop trying to predict the market and start aligning with probabilities, you unlock a level of clarity that transforms your performance. One of the most powerful secrets is the realization that every moment in the market is unique. No pattern, no candle formation, no price level has ever been repeated in exactly the same context. Once you internalize this, you stop trying to force outcomes based on past experiences. Instead, you begin to operate from a mindset where each moment is simply an opportunity with a measurable probability. This secret breaks the cycle of overconfidence after wins and hesitation after losses, because each trade stands alone. You must also understand the secret relationship between emotional pain and trading errors. Every hesitation, every premature exit, every revenge trade is a symptom. Not a lack of strategy, but a trigger rooted in fear, uncertainty, or unresolved expectations. When you commit to identifying these emotional patterns and neutralizing them, you take control away from your subconscious impulses and give it back to your conscious process. This internal mastery is the true edge that separates consistent traders from the rest. Finally, the most transformative secret is that consistent success does not come from predicting the market. It comes from executing flawlessly within your plan. The market rewards discipline, emotional neutrality, and an unwavering commitment to probability. When you learn to think in terms of risk, manage your expectations, and act without fear, you step into a new reality where consistency becomes natural. These are the secrets you should know, not to conquer the market, but to master yourself in a way that makes the market's uncertainty irrelevant. Accepting uncertainty as the foundation of every trade is the single most transformative shift a trader can make. Yet it is also the most difficult because it requires a reorientation of how you interpret the market and how you interpret your own impulses. Most traders enter the market with the illusion that with enough analysis, the right system, or a more advanced understanding of price action, they can reach a point where outcomes feel predictable, where losses feel avoidable, and where the market behaves according to their expectations. But trading does not operate within the realm of certainty. Every chart, every candle, every setup may resemble something you've seen before, but it is never the same. The conditions influencing the market, participants, sentiment, liquidity, macro drivers, shift moment by moment. Accepting uncertainty means understanding that even the most perfect setup provides nothing more than a probability. There is no guarantee behind any trade you take. And the sooner you internalize this truth, the more freedom you gain in your execution. When traders fail to accept uncertainty, they subconsciously attach emotional weight to the outcome of each trade. They want a setup to work because it looked perfect, or because they waited patiently, or because they followed all their rules. They believe the market owes them a positive result for doing things right. This belief quietly creates internal pressure that distorts perception. When you expect certainty, you hesitate when the market doesn't behave exactly as you predicted. You hold losers longer because you want them to return to your entry point. You take early profits because you fear a winning trade might reverse. In all these cases, your emotional attachment to certainty becomes the barrier that prevents you from acting objectively. Accepting uncertainty is not an intellectual concept. It is a psychological adjustment that dissolves the emotional resistance that causes hesitation, fear, and inconsistency. Uncertainty is not chaos, nor is it a lack of structure. It simply means that while you cannot know the outcome of any single trade, you can know the behavior of a large sample of trades taken with the same rules and under similar conditions. Probability thinking replaces outcome thinking. When you accept uncertainty, you stop asking, will this trade work? And start asking, does this trade align with my edge? That shift removes the emotional burden from each individual result. A single loss no longer feels like a failure, and a single win no longer inflates your confidence. Both become neutral data points within a larger distribution. This neutrality is crucial because emotional reactions push traders out of their system and into impulsive behavior. Acceptance builds neutrality, and neutrality builds consistency. One of the most subtle aspects of accepting uncertainty is learning to detach your self-worth from your trading outcomes. Many traders unknowingly tie their identity to being right, and because of that, losing trades feel like personal attacks. This creates internal conflict. You might see a valid setup but avoid taking it because you fear being wrong. You might exit early because you're trying to secure being right before the market has a chance to prove you wrong. Accepting uncertainty cuts through this identity trap by redefining success. The goal is not to be right on any particular trade, but to follow your process faithfully and repeatedly. When you measure success by process instead of outcome, you remove the ego's need for certainty and free yourself to execute without emotional distortion. Another deep layer of accepting uncertainty is understanding that uncertainty itself is what makes trading profitable. If outcomes were certain, there would be no market, no opportunity, no possibility of edge. The existence of risk, unpredictability, and fluctuating probabilities is what allows traders to extract value. The market pays those who can operate confidently in an environment where most people seek reassurance. When you embrace uncertainty, you position yourself opposite the majority of traders who are emotionally shaken by it. Instead of trying to eliminate uncertainty, you integrate it into your mindset as the natural cost of participating in a probabilistic environment. Accepting uncertainty also alters your relationship with fear. Fear in trading does not come from the market. It comes from your resistance to the unknown. When you insist on certainty, fear is the natural response because deep down you know you cannot control the outcome. When you accept uncertainty, fear loses its foundation. There is nothing to fear when you truly understand that your job is not to predict but to respond, not to control but to manage risk. This shift gives you the ability to act without internal conflict, allowing you to take trades decisively, manage them responsibly, and let go of them without regret. This acceptance further impacts discipline. Many traders struggle with discipline because at a core level they are still fighting uncertainty. They override their stop loss because they can't accept being wrong. They close trades early because they fear the uncertain continuation. They skip valid setups because uncertainty triggers doubt. Discipline becomes effortless when uncertainty is acknowledged, because you no longer expect trades to behave in a way that aligns with your desires. Rules are no longer negotiable attempts to control outcomes. They become the structure that allows you to navigate an uncertain environment with clarity and confidence. When you accept uncertainty, you free yourself from emotional volatility and mental exhaustion. You stop searching for the perfect system that never loses. You stop trying to eliminate the discomfort of not knowing. You begin to operate from a calm, probabilistic mindset where each trade is simply another opportunity with a defined risk and measurable potential. This mindset is what allows traders to evolve from struggling reactive participants into consistent professionals who understand that uncertainty is not a threat to be avoided, but a reality to be embraced and integrated into every decision they make. Treating each market moment as completely unique begins with the recognition that the market is a continuously changing environment shaped by countless variables, none of which ever align in the exact same way twice. Traders often believe that patterns, structures, and setups repeat themselves. And while they may appear similar, the underlying forces driving price at any given moment are never identical. The participants involved, the liquidity conditions, the sentiment, the broader economic context, and the psychological state of the trader observing the market all influence the outcome. When you operate from the belief that the market repeats itself exactly, you begin to expect the same results from situations that only look similar on the surface. Treating each moment as unique frees you from these expectations and allows you to respond to the market with clarity instead of assumptions. Many traders unconsciously impose the past onto the present. They see a pattern that worked before and assume it will work again. They recall how price behaved at a certain level and believe it must behave the same way this time. This creates a mental framework built on false certainty. The illusion that history will repeat in the same form causes traders to project their previous experiences onto situations that share only superficial similarities. When the market behaves differently than expected, confusion and emotional reactions take over. A trader who treats the moment as unique accepts that similarity does not guarantee repetition. This mindset keeps expectations neutral and responses flexible. Operating from the uniqueness of each moment also shifts how you interpret signals from your trading system. A setup that met all your criteria yesterday and resulted in a strong move may meet those same criteria today and still fail. This does not invalidate the system. It reinforces the truth that the market does not owe you consistency in the short term. Systems are built on probabilities, not certainties. By treating each trade as independent, you remove the temptation to expect the market to behave in a way that mirrors past trades. This shift allows you to take every valid setup without being influenced by previous wins or losses. Confidence becomes anchored in your process, not in the outcome of your last trade or your memory of how the market behaved before. Recognizing the uniqueness of each moment also reduces emotional baggage that distorts decision-making. If you believe the market is repeating a familiar scenario, you may become overconfident, increasing risk or entering prematurely. Alternatively, if a similar pattern previously resulted in a loss, you may hesitate, avoid the trade, or exit too early. In both cases, you are trading your memories rather than the present moment. By acknowledging that the factors influencing price are constantly shifting, you prevent old emotional associations from interfering with your current perception. You begin to see price movement more objectively, free from the influence of past experiences. This mindset also enhances your ability to adapt. The market evolves at all times. Volatility changes, trends weaken or strengthen, liquidity shifts, and participants move in and out. A trader anchored to the idea of repetition becomes rigid, reacting based on outdated expectations rather than real-time information. But a trader who views each moment as unique is open to subtle signals the market provides. They are not trapped by patterns from the past, they are attentive to what is happening now. This adaptability is one of the strongest advantages a trader can develop because it allows you to respond fluidly instead of forcing your expectations onto the chart. When you treat every moment as unique, you also improve your emotional resilience. Many traders suffer from cycles of frustration because they expect the market to behave in a predictable manner. When it does not, they feel betrayed, confused, or disappointed. This emotional roller coaster is a direct result of expecting repetition where none exists. The trader who accepts uniqueness doesn't personalize outcomes. They do not interpret a losing trade as the market misbehaving or their system breaking. Instead, they understand that results fluctuate precisely because each moment is shaped by a new set of conditions. This understanding brings emotional stability. The trader remains centered and composed regardless of the outcome. Another layer of treating each moment as unique is learning to observe the market without bias. Bias is often formed by past results. If your previous trade was a loss, you may unconsciously look for confirmation that the next setup is flawed. If your last trade was a win, you may unconsciously look for reasons to justify entering early or taking excessive risk. By treating each moment independently, you break the chain of emotional cause and effect. Each decision becomes a fresh evaluation based solely on current information. This clear-sighted perspective strengthens discipline because your choices are no longer influenced by past emotional residue. A unique moment mindset also aligns naturally with probability thinking. Since each moment is new, each trade stands alone. The last trade has no influence on the next one. A cluster of losses does not increase the probability of a win, and a cluster of wins does not signal that a loss is due. This understanding prevents the gambler's fallacy from creeping into your decision-making. You begin to see trades as part of a larger statistical distribution rather than a sequence where each event influences the next. This perspective allows you to stay consistent in your execution, maintaining confidence even during drawdowns and avoiding overconfidence during winning streaks. Treating each moment as unique helps you become more present in your trading. Being present means observing what the market is doing right now without projecting your hopes, fears, or memories onto it. When you use the present as your sole reference, you respond with clarity, grounded in reality instead of emotional interpretation. You are no longer pulled into narratives based on the past, nor are you distracted by imagined outcomes. Presence gives you the ability to notice subtle shifts in momentum, behavior, or volatility that traders overwhelmed by past associations often miss. It sharpens your intuition because your attention is focused purely on the unfolding moment instead of filtered through expectation. The uniqueness of each moment also invites a deeper respect for randomness. Randomness is not chaos, it is simply the natural variability of outcomes in a probabilistic environment. Accepting randomness means understanding that any trade, regardless of how strong it appears, can fail, and any trade that seems weak can succeed. Embracing this concept prevents you from attaching emotional significance to single events. You begin to operate from a broadened perspective, aware that randomness plays a role, but does not diminish your edge over a large sample. This balance between unpredictability and statistical reliability is essential for long-term success. Ultimately, treating each market moment as unique transforms how you perceive the entire trading experience. Instead of searching for repetition to gain comfort, you accept variability as the natural fabric of the market. Instead of expecting the past to dictate the future, you allow each moment to reveal itself without judgment. Instead of forcing patterns, you observe reality with clarity. This mindset frees your execution from emotional interference, allows your system to express its true edge, and aligns your behavior with the way the market actually functions. A constantly evolving environment where no two moments are ever the same, focusing on execution rather than prediction requires a fundamental restructuring of how you relate to the market. Most traders enter the trading world believing that the goal is to forecast price with accuracy, to know where the market will go next, when it will turn, and how far it will move. This belief is reinforced by chart patterns, indicators, and analytical tools that appear to show predictable behavior. But trading is not about forecasting the future, it's about aligning yourself with probabilities and executing your plan with consistency. Prediction is rooted in the desire to eliminate uncertainty, while execution is grounded in accepting it. When your focus shifts from trying to be right to acting on your rules, you step into a mindset that supports long-term consistency rather than short-term satisfaction. Prediction is seductive because it gives you the illusion of control. When you analyze the market, draw levels, examine patterns, and anticipate outcomes, you feel a sense of mastery. But this feeling is misleading. Even the most well-constructed analysis is only a hypothesis. Once the trade is open, the market takes over and will do what it wants. Traders who place their confidence in prediction experience emotional turmoil because the moment the market deviates from their expectations, fear and uncertainty surface. They hesitate to act, ignore warning signs, or hold on to losing trades because they want their prediction to be validated. This emotional conflict is not a result of poor analysis. It is a result of expecting the market to obey your expectations. Execution frees you from this mental and emotional trap. When execution becomes your priority, your job is no longer to know what will happen next, but to follow your plan flawlessly. The edge in trading does not come from predicting individual outcomes. It comes from the cumulative effect of executing a positive expectancy system repeatedly. A single trade is irrelevant in the grand scheme. What matters is consistency over a large sample size. Execution shifts your focus from outcomes to process. The moment you understand that your responsibility is to respond to the market, not control it, you begin to trade with a level of clarity and confidence that prediction can never provide. Execution also strengthens your relationship with risk. When you rely on prediction, losses feel personal, as if the market is punishing you for being wrong. This emotional response creates fear, anger, frustration, and a desire for revenge, emotions that push you farther away from disciplined behavior. When you focus on execution, losses become neutral. They are simply the cost of doing business, part of the statistical landscape within which your edge operates. This neutrality enables you to risk an amount that aligns with your system, take trades without hesitation, and follow stops without negotiation. Risk is no longer something you fight against. It becomes a structural component that supports your decision-making. A trader who prioritizes execution develops a completely different internal dialogue. Instead of asking, "Will this trade win?" they ask, "Does this setup meet my criteria?" Instead of worrying about whether price will hit their target, they focus on placing the trade correctly, managing it according to their rules, and accepting whatever outcome occurs. This shift eliminates emotional noise. Execution becomes a routine, a repeated disciplined behavior that gradually shapes a trader's identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows a process, not someone who chases outcomes. Identity matters because your actions naturally align with how you see yourself. A trader who identifies with disciplined execution will behave differently from one who identifies with being right. Execution also reduces cognitive load. Prediction requires constant monitoring, second guessing, and emotional interpretation. You analyze the chart, question your analysis, update your prediction, and adjust your expectations repeatedly. This mental cycle drains energy and increases the likelihood of impulsive decisions. Execution simplifies your mental environment. You set your criteria, wait for them to appear, take the trade, and manage it according to predefined rules. This structured approach eliminates the need to constantly interpret the market. You conserve mental energy and reduce emotional turbulence. Another powerful aspect of focusing on execution is that it strengthens your ability to handle uncertainty. When you stop trying to control the outcome, uncertainty becomes much less threatening. You no longer need the market to behave in a specific way to feel comfortable. You simply need to execute your plan. This creates emotional stability. Even when the market moves unpredictably, your behavior remains consistent. Consistency in behavior is what produces consistency in results. The majority of traders fail not because their strategy is flawed, but because they cannot behave consistently long enough for the edge to play out. Execution is the solution to this problem. Focusing on execution also improves your ability to stay present. Prediction pulls you into the future, imagining what might happen. It distracts you from what is happening right now. This leads to misreading signals, ignoring rule-based entry criteria, or staying stuck in a bias. Execution anchors you in the present moment. You observe the setup, evaluate it objectively, and act only when the rules align. Staying present removes emotional filters that distort your perception. It also enhances your ability to notice subtle shifts in behavior, changes in volatility, momentum, or order flow that are often missed when you're preoccupied with future outcomes. Execution reinforces discipline in ways prediction never can. When prediction is your focus, discipline feels restrictive because it interferes with your desire to act based on expectations. When execution is your priority, discipline becomes a natural expression of your commitment to your process. You don't fight your rules, you rely on them. This reliance builds trust in your system. Trust builds confidence. Confidence builds consistency. The entire chain starts with execution, not prediction. Another dimension of execution is emotional detachment. When you make predictions, you become emotionally invested in them. You want to be right, and being right becomes tied to your self-worth. When the market contradicts your prediction, your ego feels attacked, leading to defensive behaviors, moving stops, adding to losers, avoiding valid setups, or exiting winners prematurely. When your focus is execution, your ego is no longer involved. You are not trying to prove anything. You are simply following a predefined set of rules, and the outcome has no emotional meaning. This detachment allows you to operate with clarity even in volatile or uncertain conditions. Execution also creates measurable performance. Predictions are subjective, execution is quantifiable. When you focus on execution, you can evaluate your performance based on how well you followed your rules instead of whether the trade won or lost. This creates objective feedback that supports improvement. You identify where you deviated from the plan, where emotional impulses influenced your actions, and where discipline held strong. Objective feedback accelerates growth because it shines light on the real issues. Your behavior, not the market's behavior. Focusing on execution turns trading into a structured profession rather than an emotional pursuit. You operate consistently, manage risk effectively, and allow probabilities to unfold over time. You stop chasing outcomes and start building a repeatable process. You no longer depend on being right, you depend on your system. You stop fighting uncertainty, you integrate it. You stop reacting emotionally, you respond strategically. This transformation does not come from predicting the market more accurately. It comes from committing fully to the act of disciplined execution. Removing emotional expectations from outcomes begins with understanding that the market is not a system designed to fulfill your desires, reward your patience, or validate your analysis. It exists independent of your hopes and fears, driven by countless participants whose motivations constantly shift. Yet most traders unconsciously enter every trade with emotional expectations. They expect the market to move in their favor because their setup looks perfect, or because they follow their rules, or simply because they want the trade to win. These expectations create internal tension long before the trade even begins. Every tick against their position feels like a personal attack. Every hesitation in price movement feels like a betrayal. Emotional expectations don't just distort perception. They directly influence decision-making in ways that undermine consistency. Removing these expectations requires reshaping the foundation of how you relate to the markets and to your own emotions. Emotional expectations form because traders tie meaning to outcomes. A winning trade feels like a confirmation of intelligence, discipline, or skill. A losing trade feels like a failure or a personal flaw. This emotional attachment transforms trading from a probabilistic activity into an emotional battleground. When the market becomes a mirror for your self-worth, every outcome carries weight far beyond the monetary result. This is why traders overreact to losses, become euphoric during winning streaks, avoid taking new trades after setbacks, or become reckless after success. By removing emotional expectations, you separate your identity from the short-term fluctuations of your equity curve. You begin to see each trade not as a test of your competence, but as a single event within a much larger statistical structure. At the core of emotional expectations is the illusion of control. Traders analyze the market, build a plan, and sometimes confuse their preparation with authority over the outcome. They believe that because they followed all the rules, the trade should work. They believe the market should reward patience and discipline. But discipline does not influence price movement. Analysis does not compel the market to move according to your plan. When your emotional state depends on the market behaving as you expect, you put yourself in a psychologically fragile position. The moment the market deviates even slightly from your expectations, anxiety, fear, and frustration flood in. Removing emotional expectations means accepting that your control ends the moment you enter the trade. Your responsibility shifts from controlling the market to controlling your behavior. When expectations are removed, observation becomes clearer. Emotional expectations act like filters. When you want the market to behave a certain way, you unconsciously interpret information through that desire. You overlook warning signs because you want the setup to work. You see strength where there is weakness because you fear missing out. You hold on to losing trades because you expect price to return. These distortions can be subtle or overwhelming, but they always interfere with objective perception. When you let go of emotional expectations, you no longer look for confirmation of your desires. You look for information. You see what is happening instead of what you want to happen. This clarity drastically improves your ability to make decisions aligned with your trading plan. Removing emotional expectations also reshapes your relationship with risk. Traders who expect specific outcomes often resist risk management because accepting a stop loss means accepting that their expectation was wrong. This resistance creates the urge to move stops, widen stops, add to losing trades, or avoid stops altogether. When you release expectations, a stop loss becomes neutral. It is simply a part of the structure of your trading system, not a statement about your ability or worth. Losses become data, not emotional wounds. This neutrality enables you to implement risk controls with consistency, which is essential for long-term survival. Another important effect of removing emotional expectations is the reduction of internal conflict. Internal conflict arises when your expectations collide with what the market is actually doing. You expect price to move up, but it goes down. You expect a breakout, but the breakout fails. You expect momentum, but the market ranges. This mismatch creates psychological friction, leading to hesitation, panic exits, revenge trading, or freezing at critical moments. Internal conflict destroys execution quality. When you operate without emotional expectations, you respond to the market rather than resisting it. There is no inner battle between what you want and what is happening. You act based on rules and probabilities instead of emotion and desire. Without emotional expectations, the emotional swings that sabotage traders begin to disappear. Euphoria during wins, despair during losses, anger during drawdowns, and fear during entries all stem from expecting the market to reward or punish you. When outcomes lose their emotional meaning, you stop riding these swings. You develop emotional equilibrium. Wins feel good but not intoxicating. Losses are acceptable and non-threatening. This balanced emotional state keeps you grounded and prevents behavior that violates your trading plan. Emotional equilibrium is one of the strongest psychological advantages a trader can develop. Removing emotional expectations also improves discipline. Discipline becomes difficult when your emotions influence your actions. If you expect a trade to win, you may break your rules to protect that expectation. If you expect to avoid losses, you may ignore your stop. If you expect the market to behave in a certain way, you may force trades where no valid setup exists. When expectations disappear, discipline flows naturally. You follow your rules not because you fear outcomes, but because your focus is on the process itself. Every action is guided by structure, rather than emotion. Discipline is no longer a struggle, it becomes part of your identity. Another powerful transformation occurs in your thinking about probabilities. Emotional expectations create a mindset where each trade feels like a decisive event. A win feels like success. A loss feels like failure. This is outcome-based thinking. When you release expectations, you begin to think in terms of large sample sizes. A single trade becomes almost irrelevant. What matters is whether you executed it correctly within your system. You stop attaching emotional meaning to individual outcomes and start evaluating your performance based on consistency. This probabilistic mindset is the foundation for stable, repeatable success. Removing emotional expectations also frees you from the psychological effects of past experiences. When you expect the future to unfold based on your memories of previous wins or losses, you are not trading the present moment. You are trading emotional residue from the past. Each moment in the market is unique, and expecting it to replicate past outcomes only blinds you to its true nature. When expectations dissolve, you see each new opportunity with fresh eyes. You evaluate conditions as they are, not as you hope or fear them to be. This presence leads to more accurate decisions and a stronger alignment with the unfolding market structure. Emotional expectations also distort performance evaluation. Traders often judge themselves based on whether their prediction came true, not whether they followed their rules. This leads to confusion about what is working and what isn't. When expectations are removed, your evaluation becomes objective. You begin to measure your performance by how consistently you execute your plan. This clarity accelerates improvement because you are no longer distracted by the emotional weight of outcomes. You see the real issues: fear, impatience, impulsivity, or deviation from rules, and can address them directly. Without emotional expectations, trading becomes a process-based activity rather than an emotional gamble. You stop tying your self-worth to wins and losses. You stop fighting the market. You stop projecting desires onto price action. You begin to operate with clarity, neutrality, and stability. Every trade becomes a simple expression of your edge. Every outcome becomes data. Every moment becomes an opportunity to execute with precision rather than defend your expectations. Building discipline through consistent rule-based actions begins with understanding that discipline is not a talent, nor is it a personality trait reserved for a select few. It is a trained behavior built through repetition, structure, and a deep commitment to removing emotional impulses from your decision-making process. Many traders believe that discipline means forcing themselves to behave correctly in the heat of the moment, but true discipline is not something you summon under pressure. It is something you install into your trading identity long before you ever open a chart. Discipline is the product of rules that are so clearly defined and so consistently applied that they become automatic, removing the need for willpower or emotional negotiation. Rule-based action provides the foundation for this transformation. Rules eliminate ambiguity. They tell you when to enter, when to exit, how much to risk, when to step aside, and how to interpret the current market environment. When rules are precise and consistently applied, they create a structured pathway that protects you from the chaotic influence of emotion. Without rules, every decision becomes a subjective experience shaped by fear, greed, impatience, or hesitation. With rules, decisions become objective, repeatable behaviors that are designed to align with your edge. Consistency in following those rules is what produces predictable results over time. Discipline also grows through repetition. Every time you follow your rules, even when it feels uncomfortable, you strengthen the neural pathways that anchor disciplined behavior. You teach your brain that structure, not emotion, is the source of safety and control. Conversely, every time you break your rules, even in small ways, you reinforce impulsive decision-making. You teach your mind that emotions can override structure. This is why traders who break their rules once often end up breaking them repeatedly. It becomes a pattern, not an isolated mistake. Building discipline requires treating every rule as non-negotiable every time. Repetition creates the identity of a disciplined trader, and identity shapes behavior automatically. Consistent, rule-based action also removes the need for prediction. When you follow rules, you are no longer trying to guess what will happen next. You are simply responding to what your system tells you to do. This removes emotional pressure from the process. You no longer fear missing out because your system will guide you to the next opportunity. You no longer fear losses because your rules contain risk limits. You no longer chase the market because your entries are predefined. Discipline and rules create an environment where emotional impulses lose their power because there is no room for negotiation or improvisation. Structure replaces hope, fear, and desire. One of the most powerful aspects of rule-based discipline is that it makes your actions independent of short-term outcomes. A disciplined trader does not behave differently after a loss or after a win. The rules stay the same, and the behavior stays the same. This consistency is what allows the edge of a system to express itself. When traders adjust their behavior emotionally, trading larger after wins, hesitating after losses, skipping setups during drawdowns, they disrupt the statistical integrity of their system. They break the continuity that allows probabilities to unfold. Discipline anchors behavior so that the long-term edge is not distorted by short-term reactions. Discipline also protects you from cognitive biases. Without rules, your mind naturally gravitates toward behaviors that feel comfortable rather than behaviors that are effective. You enter early because you fear missing out. You exit late because you hope the trade will turn around. You skip trades because you fear another loss. You increase size because you feel confident. These biases are powerful because they operate beneath conscious awareness. Rule-based behavior overrides them. The rules act as a barrier between your impulses and your actions, allowing you to operate from logic rather than emotion. A disciplined trader understands that rules must be defined before the trade, not during it. During a trade, your perception becomes distorted. A small pullback feels threatening. A slow-moving market feels boring. A breakout feels exciting. These emotional distortions cause traders to rationalize breaking their rules. When rules are established in advance, they represent your most rational, balanced thinking. By following them in real time, you protect yourself from the emotional distortions that occur in the heat of the moment. Discipline is the bridge between your logical plan and your emotional environment. Another critical element of discipline is accountability. Traders often treat their rules casually, as guidelines rather than commitments. This creates inconsistency. When you treat your rules as a contract with yourself, discipline becomes easier to maintain. You begin to track not just your results, but your behavior. You identify whether you followed your rules or deviated. This transparency reveals the real cause of inconsistency. Most traders blame their strategy when their lack of discipline is the true problem. Accountability creates awareness. Awareness strengthens discipline. Discipline strengthens performance. Consistent, rule-based behavior also reduces stress. Emotional trading is exhausting. When every decision relies on how you feel in the moment, the mental load becomes overwhelming. You constantly question yourself, fear losses, second-guess your entries, and worry about exits. Rules eliminate this psychological burden. Once the rules are set, your only job is to follow them. This creates mental freedom. You no longer have to analyze endlessly or wrestle with internal conflict. The rules guide you. You execute. The outcome unfolds naturally. Stress decreases because your responsibility becomes simple. Follow the plan. Discipline also creates emotional neutrality. When your behavior is consistent, your emotional responses stabilize. Wins and losses no longer trigger extremes. A loss is simply a rule that was followed, not a personal failure. A win is simply the result of a process, not a reason to become overconfident. This neutrality prevents the emotional highs and lows that often lead traders to break their rules. Consistency creates balance. Balance supports clarity. Clarity supports skilled execution. As discipline becomes internalized, your identity shifts. You no longer see yourself as someone who reacts emotionally to the market. You begin to see yourself as someone who acts according to structure. This identity transformation is one of the most important aspects of long-term trading success. When discipline becomes part of who you are, you no longer struggle to maintain it. It becomes automatic. Your actions align with your identity, and your identity aligns with the behavior necessary for consistent trading. By building discipline through consistent, rule-based actions, you transition from an emotionally driven participant to a structured decision maker. You eliminate the chaos of emotional trading and replace it with clarity, stability, and control. Discipline becomes the foundation upon which your entire trading approach is built, shaping every action, every decision, and every outcome in alignment with your long-term edge.